and welcome to Race for the White House, a show where we bring you the latest from America's political landscape. On today's show, we'll tell you about the Obama Hour on the second day of Democratic National Convention. We'll also tell you how pro-Palestinian demonstrations are impacting the DNC in Chicago. All of this and much more, so let's get started. The double dose of Obama firepower electrified the second night of DNC. Former US President Barack Obama and former First Lady Michelle Obama proved to be the biggest validators of the night for Harris while putting everyone else in the shade. Starting with the former US President, Barack Obama took center stage in the state where he served as a state senator back in 2004. His address at the DNC last night shows that he's seasoned by more experience and keenly aware of the divisions in the country. So as soon as Obama walked onto the stage with deafening applause from the crowd, he wasted no time to put his oratory skills to work. He started off by paying tribute to Joe Biden as a man he's proud to call his president and even prouder to call his friend. Further, he made a strong and compelling case for Harris's candidacy. He described it as an extension of his own. And acknowledging the scale of the fight facing Harris, he urged people to fight for an America that they believe in. His political argument was that Democrats need to articulate a belief in Harris if they are to emerge as a winner in November elections. Obama further embraced Harris's campaign theme of freedom, saying the term encompassed everything from same-sex marriage to religious freedom to environmental rights.
The torch has been passed. Now it is up to all of us to fight for the America we believe in. And make no mistake, it will be a fight. For all the incredible energy we've been able to generate over the last few weeks, for all the rallies and the memes, this will still be a tight race in a closely divided country. A country where too many Americans are still struggling, where a lot of Americans don't believe government can help.
Praising Harris, and of course, he took direct aim at Donald Trump. But the one jibe that got the most applause was when he talked about Trump's obsession with crowd size and his whining about his problem.
The crazy conspiracy theories, this weird obsession with crowd sizes. It just goes on and on and on. The other day I heard someone compare Trump to the neighbor who keeps running his leaf blower outside your window every minute of every day.
Now coming to Michelle Obama, the former First Lady delivered an even more impassioned address than her husband. She spoke about the advantages of the wealthy and privileged in a way that left no doubt that she was talking about Trump. She drew repeated comparison between Harris and herself, speaking of them as two women of color from modest backgrounds who had to fight for everything. She also warned Democrats to brace for the kind of attacks on Harris that had been previously leveled against her and her husband.
Kamala Harris and I built our lives on those same foundational values. Even though our mothers grew up an ocean apart, they shared the same belief in the promise of this country. That's why her mother moved here from India at 19. It's why she taught Kamala about justice, about the obligation to lift others up, about our responsibility to give more than we take. She'd often tell her daughter, "Don't sit around and complain about things, do something." Chicago! The embodiment of the stories we tell ourselves about this country. Her story is your story. It's my story. It's the story of the vast majority of Americans trying to build a better life.
Another notable speaker at the convention was Second Gentleman Doug Emhoff. Now, he was very well aware that he couldn't compete with the grand oratory range of Barack or Michelle Obama, so he rather painted a more personal picture of his wife, and this included their early dates and their married life. Now, this speech wasn't supposed to motivate the Democratic Party members, but it hit the required mark.
And it's what you've seen over these past 4 years, and especially these past 4 weeks. She finds joy in pursuing justice. She stands up to bullies just like my parents taught me to. And she likes to see people do well, but hates when they're treated unfairly. She believes this work requires a basic curiosity in just how people are doing. Her empathy is her strength. Over the past decade, Kamala has connected me more deeply to my faith, even though it's not the same as hers. She comes to synagogue with me for high holiday services, and I go to church with her for Easter. I get to enjoy her mom's chili relleno recipe every Christmas, and she makes a mean brisket for Passover. It brings me right back to my grandmother's apartment in Brooklyn, you know, the one with the plastic-covered couches.
And then we had a former Republican on the stage. Stephanie Grisham was once Trump's press secretary and close aide of Melania Trump. And then she resigned hours after the Capitol riots in January 2021. So the former Trump aide offered first-hand accounts of Trump's behavior behind closed doors. At large, the narrative Democrats intend to create around this year's campaign is increasingly becoming clear. Make Harris look like a forward-looking champion of the middle class? However, Republicans strongly disagree. Now to tell us about the mood on the ground in Chicago, we have with us our White House correspondent Rohit Sharma.
We're at the Democratic National Convention here in Chicago. Behind me, you can see a lot of people right here who are trying to get into United Center. Over on this side, where you probably see that train going, that's where the United Center is. Now, there's a lot of Secret Service presence out there, and only delegates are at this point in time allowed to get into the convention center. Today is a very important day for the Democrats. They are going to present what they're calling is a vision for America, the Democratic vision for America. Now, the theme essentially is placed in such a manner that it draws your attention towards Project 2025. Now, we've all talked about Project 2025. We've seen theories about how extremist those policies could be if Trump gets elected and gets to the White House. But today also is very special in terms of Chicago. Chicago's own former President Barack Obama and former First Lady Michelle Obama will be speaking at the convention tonight. Now, they will obviously endorse Kamala Harris and would like all the Democratic voters to vote for them, but it's also coming on the heels of what some people had called the strings that were getting pulled to get Joe Biden edged out. We saw how emotional Joe Biden got last night when he talked about his achievements, and then later when he was interacting with reporters at the Air Force Base, he sort of alluded to the fact that he wasn't really behind as much as it was made in the media, but he made a choice and made a decision for the betterment of his party and betterment of his country. Now, what we'll do is we'll try to go and talk to some of these people, try to find out some people that we think are interesting. Remember, these delegates are very important. All these people that you see here right now, and I'll try to take you closer to them, all of these people are trying to get into United Center are delegates. And what are these delegates? These are the delegates that are fiercely fought by each and every candidate during the primary season. These are delegates from Iowa, Ohio, Arizona, Washington State. We talk about the swing states. That's what all these people are. They have been chosen to come here and vote for their candidate, for nominating a candidate that they think is going to be their nominee and eventually win in November. So, India Today, we will keep bringing you updates right here from Chicago, from DNC.
So as few delegates spoke about the Gaza war inside the DNC, on the outside, some pretty dramatic scenes unfolded. Just about 2 miles away from the United Center, where delegates formally nominated US Vice President Kamala Harris as the Democratic Party's nominee for president, pro-Palestinian protesters clashed with police outside the Israeli consulate in Chicago. Several arrests were made as police tried to push protesters away from the consulate. This as demonstrations over the war in Gaza have been overshadowing the convention. People have been calling out Democrats over their military support to Israel under Joe Biden's administration. And in fact, support for Democrats has been declining among Arab Americans due to the war in Gaza. Our correspondent Rohit Sharma spoke to a protester at the site. Listen in.
We're now joined by protesters here at the DNC. They are protesting against the ongoing war in Gaza. This is Code Pink. And I just wanted to understand from you, ma'am, how big of an issue this is in this election cycle.
It's a very big issue. It's so big that it got the President of the United States to have to step aside from being the candidate. It is the pro-Palestine movement that did that because it undermined the percentage he needed to beat Trump. And so the rich and the powerful moved him out of the way and inserted Kamala. Now, Kamala's not learning the lesson because she's now just saying the same things and not doing anything, and she's the vice president, she has power, and so it's not what am I going to do when I'm president, it's what am I going to do right now because she has power right now. And if she doesn't do what is necessary, those votes aren't moving.
Just out of curiosity, some people say if you're not going to be voting for the Democrats, Trump is even a worse off an option. So what choices do you have? If you don't vote and if people don't vote for Kamala Harris, Trump gets into the office.
Okay, so let's start with what voting means. So democracy is our voices. It is not our vote. A vote is something that you do, you get in a box. That is not democracy. Democracy happens every day. You know in India what democracy looks like, right? It looks like your voices. It looks like being in the streets. It looks like telling you what you need. That's democracy. The voting process is owned by the rich. The American voters have been so dumbed down by the propaganda of all the journalism that's owned by the rich and is propaganda for the state. And so voting is how they manipulate you. And you're being manipulated in America right now with the Kamala because you're hopeless. She's the new hope. But if the issues you care about, and America is 75%, the Democrats over 75% want the end to the Gaza War. That's not happening. That's called hypocrisy. And you know who uses that? Trump. He uses the hypocrisy of the Democrats to win. So how everyone uses their vote is the world they create. And voting for the lesser of two evils has created a lot of evil. A lot of evil to the people of the United States, a lot of evil to the people of the world, a lot of evil that is happening in Palestine, a lot of evil to the planet. We just keep getting more evil. So right now, in this moment in history where the curtains have been pulled back, people are saying, I'm not going to do that anymore. You are not going to play this game with me anymore. I am going to vote for what I want, both with my voice and eventually on November 3rd with my vote.
So if there's a ceasefire, would you urge voters to vote for either of the candidates?
I'm not.
Or would you think is one better than the other? There are talks about ceasefire. So if the ceasefire does happen, is there a preferable candidate that you think should get to the White House?
I work for a 501c3. We're not allowed to talk politics. So what I do is I use my voice for the issues I care about, and what I care about is the murdering of women and children in Gaza. And that is why I am here. And if we think it's about candidates instead of our voice, then we give our power over to those in power. We as the people need to keep the power with our voices and quit giving it away. And that is what we will be doing until November 3rd, because when you cast your vote on November 3rd, it's over and they own you, and anything you do in the street is white noise. Right now is where our voices matter.
So that's a very interesting thought process to the fact that some people believe that it is important for people to exercise their vote, but then the voting system, the democracy, the election in America is actually owned by the rich. And this issue of Gaza, of Israel, of war is very divisive, and it probably could cost election to either of the candidates, most likely in those battleground states, and would actually work against Kamala Harris if a ceasefire is not reached. This is Rohit Sharma from the Democratic National Convention in Chicago.
Now time for some quick updates from the political landscape in US that you might have missed. Kamala Harris and her VP pick Tim Walz have criticized Donald Trump for saying he had no regrets about overturning Roe vs. Wade judgment and ending women's right to abortion. Now, these remarks come on the heels of the former president's repeated statements boasting about overturning the Supreme Court verdict in 2022. This comes as Democrats are campaigning on protecting abortion rights, and Harris has been the administration's point person on reproductive rights in the US. Next up, a major hiccup occurred at the Democratic National Convention. Delegates at the convention voted to approve their 2024 platform without editing the language, and this reflected that President Biden is still running for re-election. So the 2024 party platform approved by the delegates explicitly refers to Biden and Harris as the candidates for 2024, and the entire platform is written with the assumption that Biden is running for president again in the year. And at last, Arizonans will be able to vote in November on whether to put right to abortion in the state constitution or not. This comes as the state Supreme Court rejected arguments by Arizona's Right to Life group to remove abortion from the ballot. Now, this group argues that abortion in the ballot would impact the thought process of the voters as they exercise their right to vote in the presidential polls. So thank you so much for watching this episode. Stay tuned to India Today Global for more such updates.